Hi, I'm Peter from Newton Fallowell. We've had lots of questions on, well, very mortgage related questions actually, on our Facebook page recently. So we thought we'd hop on this quick video call with Matthew Hines from the Mortgage Advice Bureau to answer them all for you. So good morning, Matt.
Morning, Peter. Hope you're keeping well.
Well, thank you here. How are you?
Yeah, not doing too bad, thank you. Yeah, hold up at home, keeping safe.
Good.
Yeah, doing well.
So I thought we wouldn't keep Facebook waiting too long. So if we have a quick couple of 5-6 questions about main questions we've had through, and then if you can give us your best answer, and then hopefully we can sort of, help the world out.
Definitely so. Thank you to everyone who sent the questions in. Hopefully we can give you a bit of help.
So one of the first questions we had, and I would say probably the main question we actually had from people was, they've got a mortgage offer currently. Will that be automatically extended by their bank?
So it's obviously quite an understandable concern for a lot of people. House moves are moving slower with the current climate, with obviously the issues around COVID-19. And that is running the risk of some mortgages coming to the end of their sort of offer life before the house is ready to exchange. Different banks have taken different policies. Some have added an automatic 2 or 3 month extension, but not all of them. A lot are building in a policy so that they will enable a 3-month extension at a simple request. So what you need to do is either get in contact with the person who arranged your mortgage or the bank directly and request a 3-month extension if it looks like your mortgage is going to expire before the house move is ready to complete.
Okay, so the key thing is speak to your mortgage advisor that dealt with the mortgage for you, or speak to the bank directly to get a mortgage extension.
The expiry date should be clearly on your mortgage offer, and banks are being very sort of helpful when it comes to extending it. So the process should be fine, but just make a point of checking whether or not you need to get that extended.
Okay, super. And from a new mortgage offer aspect, can people get a mortgage offer currently? Say that they were to offer and buy a house and agree a purchase on a house today. Could they actually get that mortgage offer?
Yeah, very much so, depending on the circumstances. So obviously the way a lot of people have worked have changed to cope with the current climate. Banks are no different, but it really depends what stage of the application you're at. We've actually had numerous success stories even in the last few weeks of getting mortgage offers for clients that didn't actually apply until after the lockdown came into force. Now, it does very much depend on each individual circumstances and what stage of the application you're at. But if you did apply before the lockdown and you do hit the bank's new criteria, then certainly there are circumstances where you can still get a mortgage offer. The main restrictions at the moment for potentially new applications are coming in around survey access. So unfortunately for surveyors to go to properties, which is a key part of the mortgage application process, it is not really allowed within the current lockdown restrictions. So if a bank can't inspect a property, it's difficult for them to authorise a loan. Now, there are circumstances in which they'll do what are called automated valuations, but that very much depends on the loan to value and the size of deposit you've got. So if you are at a stage where you're wanting to buy a house or you're thinking about it, but it's not possible, potentially it very well could be. So it might be worth getting in touch.
Super. It's good to know that it's still possible, because I think quite a few people, the view we got on the questions we had was, is it actually still possible to get a mortgage, and is it still possible to buy a house currently in the current sort of coronavirus situation, pandemic that we're currently seeing? So, which is really positive and quite refreshing to hear. So
definitely, I think you guys are even agreeing a couple of sales behind the background as well. So there's definitely still activity happening.
Yeah, definitely. Virtual viewings have become sort of a bit more of a norm, really. And we've been able to show people a lot more of the property than we've been able to sometimes show them actually in a viewing. Couple that with kind of sending them title deeds and giving them more information about the house to start off with has actually led to the point where we can confidently agree a sale to a buyer for our vendors. So.
Brilliant.
So we had quite a specific question from a chap called Jack over in Lincoln, actually. He's currently buying a house in Oakham. His lenders valued the property, so he's had a valuer go out to it. He's got his mortgage offer. He's really concerned that his bank might turn around and just cancel his mortgage offer or change his loan to value ratio. Can that happen?
Sort of yes and no. I mean, at the minute, the banks do still have an appetite to lend. It's all about managing the risk from their point of view. Now, as we've already touched on, inspecting the property is one key sort of milestone they need to get past. So if they've done that, that's a good tick in the box, and especially if he's had a mortgage offer issued. Now, It's always been the case that if you have a material change in circumstances between having your mortgage approved and getting the keys to the house, that you have an obligation to let the bank know. So really what, in Jack's case, he's got to look at and say, well, has his individual circumstances changed since he had that mortgage offer issued? Has he been furloughed? Has he lost his job? If that's the case, then yes, he does have an obligation to let the bank know, and then they will reassess him and the new level of risk that they've got to their potential lending. If he's had no material changes to his circumstances, if he's still working, albeit working from home, then actually the banks aren't looking to just withdraw mortgage offers or change the terms of their conditions at the minute. So that mortgage offer should be perfectly valid, and it's really just a case of focusing on the legal aspect of the purchase.
Are you still finding then that banks have quite a good appetite to actually lend on residential property currently?
Definitely, so, and remortgages as well. They still want to keep the business ticking over, but the principle that's got to underwrite everything is whether or not the risk is mitigated from their point of view. So they have to look at each case and say, is this lending responsible? Now, if they feel that they can assess that and it is responsible, then yes, they've definitely still got the appetite for lending around the sort of obstacles that they've got to build in, such as surveys, such as people being furloughed or potentially their employment being at risk.
Yeah, super. So furloughed then seems to be, well, the word that the world is kind of talking about currently seems to have been a word that no one knew about, and now everyone knows about. If you're furloughed currently, a big question we had was, if you've been furloughed and you're currently on a furlough scheme with your employer, can you still apply for a new mortgage, so to buy a new house, or can you apply for a remortgage?
Yeah, well, I think you're right, first of all. I don't think many people, if you asked them honestly, knew what the word furlough was this time 2 months ago, but everyone seems to want to talk about it at the minute. The good news is, I mean, banks have been responding in the same way as well. It's a completely new scenario for them. And actually, what we have seen certainly in the last week is a raft of high street lenders bringing policies out now which support lending to people who are in that furlough position. Now, again, as I've already touched on, and we probably will continuously do, it's all about risk management. So from the bank's perspective now, what they've got to deem is that mortgage is going to be affordable given those circumstances. So as furlough, most people will be familiar with now, capped up to £2,500, you get 80% of your salary. The affordability assessments from the bank's point of view will be done on that 80% of your salary. So if you're earning furlough income, you can use that with certain banks towards an application for a mortgage, as long as that mortgage is still affordable under those scenarios. So that's really promising for people, because it means that uncertainty, well, actually the reason I've been furloughed is because I need to have a job to go back to, and I can keep these other elements of my life ticking over in the background as well. So it's not every bank, we must stress that, and it is a case-by-case basis. But yes, there are products and there are banks that will sort of entertain applications from people in that furlough position.
It's good to see banks are being really quite proactive in their approach to lending currently. I guess some thought banks might just sit still dealing with payment holidays and customer care of current customers, but it sounds like actually they're dealing with the customer care element on one side of it, and actually still dealing with the new product, new mortgage and remortgage elements to it as well, which is really quite reassuring and really positive to hear. So
definitely, they've really adapted the way they're working in the same way a lot of people have, and we'll be honest, they're under a strain because they've had to redistribute a lot of their resources towards things like payment holidays, which we'll come on to. But it's a case of they do still have that appetite for lending, and as they've adapted their policies to support people's circumstances actually quite quickly as well. So yeah, there's definitely an element, there's definitely an appetite for working with new clients. It's just a case of making sure they're in a reasonable position to afford the loan.
Super. So a lot of the questions we had as well were kind of from looking through them all. We're actually, the majority were from first-time buyers, which is, again, great to see first-time buyers still wanting to buy a house. I think a lot of them actually, their final question from their mortgage questions were, if you were a first-time buyer, would you still be looking to buy a house now? What would your kind of comments and say on that?
Yeah, and it's a very interesting question. We've had that not just from people that are thinking about buying, but people that are actually in the process of buying a house. Maybe they started that process a couple of months ago and are thinking, actually, it's quite a big commitment. Is now the right time for me to get on the ladder? What I'll say is we are obviously entering unprecedented times, and different experts have got different opinions. But what seems to be the overwhelming hope and optimistic look is that once the lockdown's lifted, the housing market, like the rest of the economy, is going to really rally back and potentially even have a bit of a boom. So the houses that could be coming to the market over the next 3 to 6 months, once this is lifted, will probably give those first-time buyers a lot more choice than they would have had in a normal year potentially. So that, combined with the fact that banks do seem to have an appetite for lending money at the moment, it could be a good time to really look at getting on the ladder this year, and you'll have more choice to find that right home. There's also new builds that are looking to sell. The government schemes are still in force as well. So there's a lot of ways to help first-time buyers get on the ladder this year. It's got to be right for your individual circumstances, but once these restrictions are lifted, it could be a good time to buy potentially.
Super. So by kind of like wrapping everything up in a bit of a nutshell, market still seems quite positive. Mortgages are still being done. Remortgages are still being put through, and actually products are being sort of taken. So.
Yeah, and I think what's really been quite encouraging and promising over the last month, with all the challenges that the industry has been presented with, and you would probably ask people like yourself a year ago and said, well, look, if people couldn't view houses, couldn't do surveys, couldn't necessarily go into estate agents, would the industry still be able to tick over? You'd probably have said no. But in all fairness, agents like yourselves at Newton Fallow are doing things like virtual viewings, online inquiries. Everyone's adapted to help the market sort of keep moving forward, really. And it's really quite reassuring and promising to see that the industry will be there for people to go back to once the restrictions are lifted.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks very much for your time today, Matt. I'm hoping this has answered probably a lot of questions that people have had sat at home. We've gone back to everyone that's inquired and sort of messaged us directly on it. But hopefully this might give you at home a bit of an idea into the mortgage market as well. Obviously, if you have got any questions to put to us here at Newton Fallow or to Matt, just drop us a message on Facebook, put a comment out, or give us a call. More than happy to help. I hope everyone's staying safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you all soon.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Peter. Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.